Tonight, as expected, Democrats took over the majority in the House of Representatives while Republicans actually gained in the Senate, also as expected. Oh, now you figure out how to predict these goddamn things, screamed Hillary Clinton.
Idris Elba has replaced Blake Shelton as People Magazine's sexiest man alive. Well, so at least People Magazine has flipped Democrat.
According to a report, millions of voters asked Google who to vote for on this election day, which is why here on the Trump Report, we can give our official projection as the new Democratic senators from the state of California, Siri and Alexa.
Rihanna is the latest artist to ask Donald Trump to stop using her music at his rallies. Honestly, if Rihanna wanted Trump supporters to stop listening to her music, she should just remind them that she's an immigrant.
And finally, Ted Cruz defeated challenger Beto O'Rourke, who apparently didn't realize that all you need to defeat Ted Cruz is a string of garlic, holy water, and of course, a mirror. The Trump Report starts now!
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
That's right. Welcome to the midterm election special.
Why are the lights purple, though?
In honor of Prince. Yes, that's true. It is a purple wave. It's a little blue, a little red, a little everything to go around. Yeah. Welcome to the Trump Report tonight. We've got a mostly full house and not a fuller house, but I am Christian Bladt, joined as almost always by the one, the only, Chelsea Galicia.
Hello, everyone.
And Tamra Brown.
Is this the Who we're listening to?
This is Alice Cooper. The song is called Elected. He wants to be elected.
Oh, got it.
But I know the Who song you're thinking of, and it's not Squeezebox. And at the end of the desk, the one, the only, Scott Moore.
Hey, guys.
And your corner of the desk is the decision desk. Because we always have you watching all the polling, the exit polling, all the data, anything that is late breaking. 2 years ago when we did the presidential election, we had Scott coloring in a map. We don't have enough room in the studio for that. So just imagine that that's what he's doing.
And it'd be very tiny if you were doing all those little house seats.
Districts, yeah.
You know what? I kind of wish we did
wonky,
it.
Like the shapes are really bizarre.
Very gerrymandered.
District 2 in Rhode Island.
You would have to know the shapes of like all the counties and parishes throughout the country. And on the couch, our friend Brooke Soliz. Thanks for coming out here this evening.
Here. I'm glad that Scott Moore is the Steve Kornacki of AfterBuzz TV. I love it.
And on the couch, joining us for the first time. Should I use the middle initial? Is it just Paul Daniel? Is it Paul K. Daniel? What?
Yeah.
Oh,
K. Daniel.
Do we hear Paul? Because I didn't hear you.
Paul K.
There
Daniel.
we go, right there.
Yeah.
And Paul, you have the distinction of sitting on the couch, which for those of us that were around during the Trump versus Hillary's days, that was known as the Trump of dissent, because it was where we would occasionally have a voice that maybe disagreed with the rest of the panel. Brooke, you're sitting on the couch. I guess he's on the cushion of dissent, but very quickly, tell us. Well, there's a lot for you to dissent about, but Paul, very briefly, first of all, welcome. We really appreciate you being here,
for having me.
especially because you are a bona fide conservative libertarian, and in the 2+ years we've been doing this, I always try to get those on the show, and every once in a while we do get
so
one.
rare in California.
We do get them, but it's very difficult. So thank you. And because you're here, I would like to start with you. How do you feel like tonight's going?
Oh man, kind of interesting, and I still don't even know. There's news breaking all the time, so I don't even know what the full.
Yeah, I mean, the indication is that, I think that everybody's projection, people are scared to be in the projection business these days, go figure. But I think that pretty early we were getting projections for Democrats taking the House, and it was just a matter of how many seats. Do we have like a sense right now, Scott, where that is? I'll let you check if you don't have the answer.
For which part?
For the Democrats in the House, like what they've picked up.
The numbers.
Well, it's still right around 218 officially, so that's basically we're on the cusp for getting the House. But we have the districts out here in California that we're going to wait to hear back on.
And of course, those could turn red. That's what could definitely happen in California. And then we'll see what's going on in the Senate. And we're going to be on for a little bit more than an hour. We'll be on for about an hour, 45 minutes tonight. So when there's late breaking news, Scott is just going to start, yelling into the mic, I have something important to talk about. So, Paul, where was sort of your thinking heading into today? Where we might end up at the end of the day?
I was pretty optimistic. I was thinking that actually it was possible to pull off the House and the Senate. It was
Well,
a minority opinion.
Vice President-
What's optimistic for you? I'm not sure I understand.
to have both.
To have both.
Keep the House and keep the Senate.
And Vice President Pence would agree with you because he predicted that Republicans were going to keep the House. But you know, it doesn't look that way. But I guess, Scott, as we learned 2 years ago, is it impossible?
Pretty much now it is.
Okay, because California is really
no, but I mean pretty much already
Okay.
because they have the numbers they need in the House, and it's already a foregone conclusion. We've already had Nancy Pelosi speak, and you know it's pretty much a done deal for the House. For
Ooh,
sure.
will we get around to talking about whether Nancy Pelosi will remain? Go back, return to as
we are
Speaker?
definitely going to talk about that and why it's such a terrible idea. But
Can I just do my Mike Pence joke real quick? Since you mentioned it and almost halfway said it. Well, Mike Pence predicted that Republicans will retain control of the House. And if anybody knows about control, it's the man who's never had an orgasm.
But only when mother lets him. Anyway, so I guess because it's all up in the air, I don't know. Would you say you're finding any of this disappointing? And by that I mean the show you're sitting on. No, I mean the returns, what you are seeing, or do you feel like it's, you know, it's not really a resounding reaction one way or the other. You know, it's like if Democrats even came close to getting the Senate, there could be something to be said, right?
Yeah, I think I'm just being honest with what I wanted to happen.
Right, because we traded texts yesterday, so I know what you were
I think there was
thinking.
a margin of error, 1 to 2% of some of these seats that could have gone, and it was kind of anyone's guess on the early voting numbers, which was coming in, and people wondering, would that translate? What would actually happen with the early vote? How many would come out? So there was many things that were up in the air. The media wasn't reporting too much on how much the early voting had been in favor in like 9 out of the 10 closest swing states. You had them polling way ahead, Republicans turning out more than 2014, some states 2016. And so it was, we got some momentum. Will it translate on the day? We'll see. So I kind of went into it saying, that would be ideal. I'm completely willing to say, okay, well, the Senate, where Trump really wanted to pick up his seats and really wanted to maintain his majority in the Senate, where he was going hard with all of his rallies, I think he did succeed in keeping his you've got Holly, you've got, you know, breaking news, Kramer, you've got, we're still waiting on McSally, but you got Cruz. And I mean, for me, honestly, as a conservative, to see Gillum lose and Abrams lose and Beto lose where they spent so much money, $70 million in Texas, and you have so much money spent, and the blue wave is coming, it's unstoppable, we're gonna reject everything Trump stands for.
I would say that there are definitely like blue splashes when you look at the map, but if you think of a blue splash, you think of those like weird toilets that have the blue water in it, and then that's the kind of splashes we're getting around the country. But you know, it's not resounding, but it is definitely. Look, a lot of people, what they had the opportunity to vote for were House seats, and it looks like a lot of people what was important to people was basically to reject the last 2 years. And I don't know, historically, I'll turn to Scott for this. It happened like twice in 200 years or something that the midterm doesn't go against the newly elected president. I mean,
Correct.
that's and I won't put you on the spot as to what those were, but
definitely 2002 was the most recent after 9/11 when George W. Bush was in the White House. That was the most recent.
Right. So I think that this was to be expected, and I think that, look, there's a lot for Democrats to be happy about, but it's also not. Look, to have things go the way you expected, I joked about it in the beginning, but it's like, oh, well, things didn't go the way they expected 2 years ago, so it's like, at least there's that.
But I do think it's important to point out that with what the House, the Democrats taking over the House shows us, and that districts all throughout the Midwest, and how successful Democrats have been tonight in Kansas, and things like that. It's like, I think that's very indicative that Democrats are no longer the party of the coasts. Like we're seeing now all of the purple throughout the entire country.
And to piggyback off of that, if you go even deeper, more local, I think that you'll see that there was more of a wave than we see on the national level. And I think that's
by the way, our friend in the chat, Shareable Texas, welcome, by the way, refers to it as a purple puddle. So the splashes are just, sort of, that's why we had the purple lights earlier.
And I think Beto can really be proud for the showing that he made in Texas. I mean, given that Texas is such a red state and there are really strong conservatives, the fact that he's made a national wave as well. I know a lot of people are saying, Beto for president 2020, which I like
you keep putting the accent on Beto.
Well, that's
Beto.
because,
I mean, El Paso, Roberto Beto.
But what I would say is perhaps they needed a Beto candidate than him, someone who actually could have won.
The skateboarding didn't do it.
I brought that up on the show, and everybody was like, "No, that's not pandering."
You got to say that he really is a guy with true morals and character, and he was able to really talk about uniting both red and blue, and I feel like that really stands for something. I mean, I hope that we start to move in that direction because it's really needed.
I think it would be. Let me just say, I think it would be great if we move in that direction, and I'll definitely give you a second, Paul. But what I do want to talk about is sort of this idea that he makes sense to run for president in 2020. But Paul, your thought first.
Yeah, just real quick on Robert Francis O'Rourke here. Not going to call him Beto.
Given that name as a child, literally when he was like 3 years old.
I mean, look, and we all remember President Barry Obama, so it's
he didn't change his name to Ted.
I mean,
when it was really
Raphael. But when it comes to Beto, I saw a person who took every single position you could possibly take. And when you say the most patriotic thing you can do is kneel for the anthem in Texas and be anti-gun and for single payer, there isn't a really mixture of bringing the right and the left together, the red and the blue together. You see stark differences in philosophies and ideologies. And that's important to mention, especially in a state like Texas.
Well,
because he tried to take every position possible.
No, I would actually disagree with you on that by saying, and I'll say across the board for the candidates that went full-on progressive, to see how close those races were. Like in Texas, when you saw Governor Abbott win re-election by over 20 points, and you see between him and Ted Cruz, it was only a couple 100,000 difference in a state like Texas. You see Florida, where Andrew Gillum ran on progressive ideals, less than 1% difference. There could be a recount tomorrow. You see Stacey Abrams. And I think these people that decided to go full-on progressive and didn't apologize for that, instead of what Democrats have done in the past in a lot of these states is, let's be moderate. Let's be lean conservative, and we have to cater to the moderates and the conservatives of the state. And these candidates did not do that. And I think as you look at the future and you see some of the propositions that passed in a lot of these states too, you see the women that won, you see LGBT causes that won by huge numbers, LGBT candidates that won. I look at it as overall a mixed bag, but a lot more positive for Democrats. You look at the governors that won informally red-held seats. You see a lot of stuff today that looked very, very promising for Democrats as we head into 2020 because the math was always on the Republican side for this one. This was the Senate seats. I will say I'm a little bit disappointed by a lot of the Democratic incumbents that lost because I thought incumbency was going to help a little bit. But if you look at the math, it was the worst for either party in the Senate in over half a century.
For moderates, especially, because Democratic moderates and Republican moderates, those are the ones that lost their seats.
But you see, going in the future, the math changes exponentially for Democrats for the Senate.
Right, and I think on that, I think a perfect example would be somebody like Claire McCaskill. Like this is not a year for Claire McCaskill, to be Claire McCaskill.
Right, it was very red
Heidi
state.
Headkamp.
Well, but I was just going to bring her up. I feel like that is so not her fault that the Supreme Court comes in and says Native Americans can't vote because they don't have a physical address the way that most of us.
And Kramer also had name recognition. He was the only congressman for the whole entire state of North Dakota because the population is so small. So you had statewide name recognition. Rick Scott had statewide name recognition and millions of dollars to basically... Rick Scott has only won every single one of his elections by 1% or less. So the fact is I see a very, very split country that's very close. Midterms are always difficult for Democrats. I overall am very pleased by the numbers that we had and the direction that the country's going.
Right, but to be devil's advocate, I don't think that Republicans have a lot to be that upset about. You know what I mean? If losing the Senate would have been like, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Right, the Senate.
Because if they lose the House and the Senate, then it's like, well, then it turns into every week is the impeachment and because everything has to stop in the House. The Senate's not going to advance anything that they aren't interested in from the House.
There are going to be a lot of investigations. That's what the next couple of years are going to be
you
about.
know what? When Republicans had the House, there was a lot of votes.
There were
a lot of votes.
Paul had a thought on that. And
we'll get to that in a second. The Republicans had a lot of votes to repeal Obamacare when they had the House. You know, so it's like you can do that stuff as much as you want. It's just you're just doing it so you can say you did it. So it's like we're doing this investigation. We can't do anything. You can't bring articles of impeachment if you just have the House. But I do want to let Paul make his point, and I still want to talk about Texas. It's still here in my head. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, a few things. Back to your point, I think it is vindicating for Republicans that everyone who voted no on Kavanaugh lost their seat. Had Camp Donnelly and Kramer. They all.
I'm going to true. West Virginia.
The only person who did was Manchin, who voted yes. That is true, because the only person who voted yes was Joe Manchin. And he kept
that's
seat.
interesting. I actually didn't realize that.
Everyone who voted no against Kavanaugh lost their seat, and it was proven later on that people did start to drift away from their parties after that was exposed, or that people started saying we have problems with this, and they started contacting their local senators saying,
which was something we talked about.
Heidkamp voted in favor of him.
No, she voted
against him. The only person who did was Joe Manchin.
But I'm blaming that one on the Supreme Court decision with the Native Americans not being able to vote.
I don't know that
that
impacts.
I
don't think that impacts every state, though.
That
you're talking about
lost.
one race is impacted by that.
I don't think that's why they lost. I think they lost because they were in very red states that were defending states that Trump won by 10 points or more. And you see Montana, John Tester is in the lead right
now.
Trump
won West Virginia by over 50.
So I think it could
be. I'm saying
a...
John Tester's winning Montana. He voted no, and he's winning in a very red state as well. And he's.
I think it could be sort of a chicken or the egg thing where they may have voted against Kavanaugh because they knew that they were kind of in trouble and they were trying to maybe bring people into the fold that weren't necessarily going to be there.
Just bringing up, it's a nice from a conservative position. It's a nice vindication for all those who. Only Joe Manchin was the one who said, I'd consider it. I'd consider voting for Kavanaugh. It used to be, as Lindsey Graham pointed out, and Ginsburg herself pointed out, it used to be not this so neck and neck 51-49. It used to be in the 80s, 90s, are you qualified? And then you had this kind of split. And so you had people saying, and Manchin was the only one who really took it seriously. Everyone else, Donnelly and across the board, they all said no.
Again, John Tester, and he's winning in Montana, so that doesn't
well,
quite
John
hold
Tester
up.
Let us, for those
John Tester voted against the Kavanaugh, and he's winning in Montana, is what I'm saying.
We have a great chat right now, so anybody who has thoughts on that, please join in. I wanted to sort of circle back to Texas for a moment for two reasons. One, Shareable Texas does say, as Shareable Texas, I'm sad about Beto, but that means that Brooke needs to run next time, and Doctor Who Geek, thanks for watching this show, chimes in Brooke 2020. So you really should
keep it coming.
You should really get your last name figured out before you put yourself on the ballot.
Soliz,
okay, yeah, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I'm in California.
What I was wondering about a state like Texas, where, look, you do see, sure, Beto's campaign spends all this money, but you do see sort of this groundswell of support. How have as a Texan, that's why I ask you.
Former Texan.
Well, yeah, but it's in your blood. Come on.
It is.
I mean, but has there been a change there where you're starting to see that it's not, that it's a little bit more of a mix? Like you would think okay, well, Austin might vote for Democrats, but then the rest of the state wouldn't. Is there a little bit more of a mix there? And I know you don't live there anymore.
Well, Scott can verify. If you guys look at the major cities, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, all of the border cities, they all were blue and have been blue for quite some time. So it's more of the bigger cities that remain Democrat, and then there are all of the rural Bible Belt cities that are red. What I was mentioning before about Beto was that when I say, strong morals and character and uniting us, I'm not saying that he wasn't holding strong to his policies, which he has. What I was saying is that he ran a race that wasn't dirty. It was a clean race. He didn't take money from any organizations or any
fingers,
any PACs. This was all money. You said he spent a lot of money. Actually, the people donated money. Millions of people donated money, as well as, just like Tamra mentioned, there were a lot of negative ads that were run not by him, and he denounced those ads, and he never, like she said, pointed fingers or went to he never hit below the belt like Ted Cruz did and has. And so for me, that was refreshing to see, really. And I do believe that it's just a matter of the people who are in those rural areas who have always been Republican, and I think will remain steadfastly Republican, who still hold power there in that state.
And even though he lost, the whole El Paso section of Texas, the El Paso side, which is where he's from, and that part of the border is blue, where previously it picked up all Democratic House seats in that region, and they think it was because of Beto lost, but his influence is what helped those House seats in that region.
I know 2020 is a long time away, but not as long as you would think if you looked at a calendar. I would say that. Why would you talk about this guy running for president when he couldn't win Texas? Like, why? If he can't win that state, what red states is he going to do well in?
I think that he could really, really win favor in the entire nation. I mean, Texas is one of the most conservative states.
Sure.
And he made such a strong showing in one of the most conservative states. So I think that nationwide that he has the potential more than any other candidate that I can think of right now in terms of Democrats.
Well, that's the real problem that Democrats have.
He just has so much charisma. And it factor and such strong messaging that the U.S. really needs. Strong messaging in terms of, like I said, morality and true charisma and character.
The real question is, I mean, I think I think
like, what?
Yeah, we need an ISO just on Paul. No, but
am I making you uncomfortable,
Not
Paul?
at all. I'm having fun.
I would say that it's more a testament to like. Yeah, who should Democrats want? And we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. There aren't a lot of, when you have to throw Joe Biden's name out there, it's like, could you just have anybody who's, I don't know, maybe this side of 50? Just as a thought, I don't know. I mean, I know that might seem ageist, but it's you gotta go for something different this time around.
I don't know. When I see Beto on that stage and speaking, I see a future
president. Well, I think he would connect with people better than Joe Biden would. I absolutely think it would be better than Joe Biden.
He clearly makes the right uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no. So a few things to that. Number one, there's a border town that had a Democrat running mayor that had won for 140 years plus and flipped Republican. It was largely African American and Hispanic, and it kind of confused everybody because it was close to the border, and they said these were normally going blue, and it flipped to red. I can't remember the name of it. It was over summer. It was a special election, and it hadn't gone red in 140 years, and it flipped. And the thing with Beto, I will give him this. I will say he is not ashamed to be what he is, which I appreciate. So he's a leftist, in my opinion, and he's okay with that. What I don't like is like I'm not a leftist, but I really am, which is I think you have problems with some of the senators in House who run like that, and they try to say, I'm not this, but really they are. And
well,
so
more left compared to you, but not.
No, I mean like
left.
single payer. I mean like not where positions that used to not be so the Clinton era, if you will, or just going back to the party of JFK. That the party's completely changed from a conservative point of view, where you had it's not the party of JFK anymore. And so when you have someone who just embraces it, I'll give Beto that. I won't give him the moral standpoint from, him denying his DUI in the police report and saying that didn't happen. But he has at least that going for him. He's like, I'm honest, but I'll take all these positions which the majority of the country I don't think are in favor of. So I do
but
get
you do not believe that the majority of the people in the country are for single
like
payer?
Yes, 100% not.
I'm disagreeing on that too.
It's
I also
interesting
think,
because I saw numbers, but numbers lie. People. I'll let Christian come back.
Well, no,
to
I just
some of
think that
to be
the
like,
majority of people actually don't care.
No, but I see. I see. I mean,
look,
that's not true.
I'm just saying that somebody has to be. I don't think that the majority of Americans care about single payer. And why?
I think they
why
do. They think healthcare is
absolutely.
really expensive.
That was on the top of the list of voters' concerns this
really
time around.
Expensive.
Absolutely, and I think when you look at progressive causes, you see that overwhelmingly people do support that.
Well, they definitely care about it more than they care about the environment, which is definitely bumped way down on the list now. I don't know. Have we heard? Was anybody like a global warming or a climate change candidate?
There were a lot
during any of this?
In Florida. There was because there was that red tide fiasco. So yeah, I think there were some environmental issues that.
But it's not the hot button issue. I would say that
not on the list of things per se, like immediately, but I do think it is, and I think there were quite a few people that have put that on the top of their list. But if you're looking at just the general progressive things, won handily on ballots across the nation, expanded Medicare, legalizing marijuana. having the felons restored their voting rights
in Florida.
In
Did that happen anywhere else besides Florida?
In Louisiana.
Oh, okay,
that is so huge.
They're huge things, and again, when you take that out of the equation, you start just looking at the issues. Progressive issues tend to win across the country.
Where do libertarians stand on restoring voting rights for felons?
Well,
is there a position?
Where do you personally? Maybe let's put it that way. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah.
I think it depends. I think it depends on how you do it. So, I think Florida's position. I'm not sure if it was how many years, and they said not to sex offenders or murderers. I think I'd like to look at bills individually and try to decide from there. I don't think there's an overall position except for one of more freedom and more liberty and less government. So overall, I would say most conservative libertarians just want the government out of our lives. We do believe in the forgiveness of like, oh, if you've served your time. So if the states want to decide up to themselves what the voters want, and they decide, hey, we're okay with 7 years.
Well, that's what it was in Florida. Because the felons
I'm not saying that's necessarily right or wrong.
Well, what was happening with that is that the felons had to appeal after, I think, like 10 or 20 years, they could appeal to have their voting rights restored, but they were consistently denied, and that's what the problem was. So to say that, it should be up to the people, meaning the elected justices that made the decision. No,
I'm just saying I don't know exactly what Florida. I'm being honest. I don't know exactly how it went in Florida with all the judges and what the pros and cons were when I heard about the amendment. But I don't think necessarily, my first personal opinion is, well, wait, I need to hear more about.
Well, the point that you raise about, there being certain crimes that, maybe you don't actually get to vote. And what did you say? Murderers and sex offenders?
And they said, no, they wouldn't have those restored.
I'm okay. I just based on very little, I'm okay with them not voting. That's fine. Yeah, I feel like it's okay.
But the majority of felons are not
right. No, but like somebody who got caught up selling one rock too many of cocaine, well, they could probably vote. That's probably all right. What I want to ask, starting with Paul, is President Trump tweeted out tonight, "Tremendous success tonight. Thank you to all." Would you say that this is a tremendous success, or just a?
I could have told you he said that. I didn't see.
I didn't see
him say that.
Look, we all could have predicted. We could have all written yesterday. What do you think President Trump will tweet?
It's part of his charm. It's part of his beauty to me, and I'll explain why.
He is beautiful. No,
I mean,
look at this. Look at this man. You can't see him in the shot.
You truly believe that he's charming?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the thing is
he's not the only one.
No, I'm just. I'm just confirming.
What most people, I think, don't get about his brilliance, actually, in my opinion, is that he's always pushing towards the positive side of things, always. Which is why it makes no sense when people call him names.
That makes me laugh out loud.
When he calls women pigs and dogs.
Positive when he's
being very uplifting.
He runs on fear. That's pretty funny.
Only when they're pigs and dogs. Come on.
Wait, hold on. I really want to hear the rest of the shot.
I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah. I'm fine. 5 on 1. Let's do it. I'm totally fine.
I'm fascinated.
And I would love to go through each and individual case if you like. But what I'm trying to say in the overall point is that Trump is someone that understands the psychology of things. Like when he talks about the stock market or things moving in a general direction, he's always going to say this is the best, this is the best. And the reason why is because he understands the psychology of why you push something to get to an eventual direction of something. So if you start saying, well, I don't know, it's not the best economy in the last 6 years, but the last 10 years, he doesn't deal in that way. He understands as a businessman that what you say is, we're pushing for the best, this is what we're doing. So of course he's going to look at the things from always that prism of, this is the best we're trying to do. And of course it was a success. From his point of view, he rallied in all these 11 different cities in the last week, unheard of actually, from what he was doing, 3 in a day. No one had ever done this before in a midterm election. And he got a lot of these different senators.
I'm sorry, it's making
people
me
can laugh while they're talking. It's fine.
No, it's funny.
And then he also got Holly. He got all these different senators, which I think was one of his goals. He didn't get the House. I don't know what the updates are, but I don't think, from a larger perspective, from my perspective of someone who does support our president, when he says it's a tremendous success, the people who take the bitter side of it and say, oh my God, I just laugh and say he's injecting positivity. and he has some.
Well, the thing that I think you're absolutely right about is
positivity and just
limited vocabulary.
Okay. Right.
But
well, not even that.
No.
I mean, he's just repeatedly put down so many different people in so many ways.
And
from calling the porn star he slept with a horse face to
I mean, look, that just shows that just shows he has bad judgment. You know, who spends $130,000 to sleep with a woman who has a horse face?
Sure.
Well, and then he lies consistently all the time, and he caters with fear. That's how he runs. He fears talking about a caravan coming.
That's what he does, but
that's fear. That's not positive. That's fear. He runs on fear, scaring people.
I might have to institute a talking stick.
He has put down so many people. I just don't understand how.
That makes no sense.
We're doing the thing that we usually don't do, but is where we're all talking over each other. We have plenty of time, so everyone can speak. But I want to go first because I want to. But to Paul's point, did I just say that there's plenty of time, Chelsea? Because we've gotten away from the point that I wanted to address. Paul's point about President Trump is that he is a businessman, and what is he selling? Well, for him, he's selling America. What do those red hats say? Make America great again. So if he says that this is the best economy, well, it doesn't matter if it's the second best over 8 of the 9 years or whatever you said. You know, none of that matters because it's like, well, look at that, it is the best. And if you can point to it and be like, well, it's good. So you know, he's trying to sell you a used car. It's all right. It's fine. So I think that to the base, but then also I think there are people who go like, well, I don't know if I like this guy, but I kind of like enough of what he's doing where they're able to just go like, yeah, I don't like the way he talks about women. I don't like that he says the press is the enemy of the people. But you have enough people.
You never said the press.
What, the media, or
he said fake news is the
fake news. Is
he never said the press.
He does say mainstream media.
Okay, well, look, that's splitting hairs. So it's like whatever it is. There are people that don't like those things.
He's trolling everybody.
They'll still look the other way because of other things. Is the point that I'm making now, Chelsea?
But he calls CNN and NBC fake news, so that's what you know.
And the failing New York Times.
That's different than saying that
New York
the
Times
press is the enemy of the people. He has never stated the press is the enemy of the people.
I think that's semantics.
No. It's the most striking contradiction. Discernment you can make and what he's actually doing and how the press interprets his words.
What he thinks is fake news, which is anything that he doesn't like.
Right, exactly. That's not
it's
positive.
Not actually.
That's not positive.
So everybody can agree. No one would like fake news done about Chelsea. Wouldn't like fake news done about Chelsea, right? I wouldn't like fake news done about me. He's just saying no one likes fake news, but he never said the press is the enemy of the American people, which is what the press then reports it as, saying you're against our First Amendment, you don't want to sin, you hate all of us. He's completely actually using his freedom of speech to say, wait a minute, I can push back.
Though.
He did.
I think
he
literally says CNN, MSNBC,
they are fake news. He's never said
they are the enemy of the people. And then they report what he says, which is that they're not fake news.
Oh my Lord.
Really?
Yes, he has.
So he does say the fake news media, but it's a matter of perspective. As to it's what he thinks is the fake news media. So he says the fake news media, and look, you can disagree, right? But he is saying
one's the First Amendment of our country, and one is not.
So he's specifically citing the New York Times, CNN, NBC News. Right. So if you think that those are all fake news, then that's what he's saying.
Do you believe that they're all fake news? That everything that they report? No, I'm asking you. Do you believe everything that they report is fake, and therefore you can blanket statement they are fake news?
So when you say, just like, I had a tremendous evening.
I have a quote. Trump says press is out of control.
Well, that's different. Yep. Thank you.
So once again, proving my point. Thank you. He never said the press is the enemy of the people. And he even trolled everyone the other day saying, check out my tweet 2 days ago. They said that I said that the press was the enemy of the people. I said it's fake news. Everyone can agree. No one likes fake stories about them. And I think you all can agree many have been done towards him that are unfair and not right. One is a First Amendment issue, which is what everyone's trying to say he's trying to take away. He's like Hitler, he's like Stalin. They go nuts. And he's saying, wait a minute, you guys keep doing that when I'm not.
When he says, oh, we're going to tighten libel laws, which you can't really do, that doesn't mean...
And he never has.
But that sentiment is not a...
Lincoln has, Woodrow Wilson has. But he's one who's never had. There's more transparency in speech than ever.
And we will definitely move on from this because there's plenty more to talk about. Hold on a second. I hear whatever you're watching, Tamra, so turn the volume off. So a tweet from President Trump, February 17, 2017. This is basically what we're saying. The fake news media, parentheses, failing New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. So what you're saying is definitely splitting hairs. He is saying that those outlets are the enemy of the people, which is, I think, not constructive. But that's not actually the point we were making. The point I was making is that some people are like, oh, I don't like that, but they still like the results.
Can I just say real quick? In 3 seconds of Googling, I found a direct quote saying the press is dishonest. The press is out of control.
There's something wrong with that.
Depends on what you're saying in the press.
The press is dishonest.
Yeah, and
he said that.
And there's many examples to prove that. But saying they're the enemy of the people is what gets the media hopped up on saying you're against the First Amendment of freedom of the press and you're trying to shut down our voice. It's nonsense. There's never been more vocalness towards the president. There's never been more people allowed to say what they want to say, more books written, more podcasts done.
I don't think he has to say that directly. I think that it can be inferred based on all of his tweets is what he's trying to get at.
Okay.
He's saying, oh, wait, you called me Hitler? You called me Stalin? I'm going to push back and say that's fake news? That's awesome, because you shouldn't be calling it.
I always think it's stupid when anyone calls anyone Hitler, because there isn't anything that can compare to. Well, I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying it's always stupid. It's like, so look at the, do a little bullet points of what Hitler did and what anyone has done since. I mean, not even Pol Pot is Hitler, but I do want to move on because I wanted to talk about Nancy Pelosi, who seems to already feel like she gets the big gavel back and she should be the Speaker of the House. And I want to start with Chelsea. Do you think that she is someone who best represents the Democratic Party going forward, or should they maybe find someone new?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they should find somebody new. Now, this is somebody, I appreciate everything that Nancy Pelosi has done, but she is very representative of the old guard. She is a great fundraiser, which has made her very popular, but that is not the brand I think that the Democratic Party should have, is like our head honcho is the best, fundraiser from a lot of the very corporations that we would like to see regulation or some kind of crackdown on. So I appreciate her. She's been a great leader, and it's time for somebody else. I'm not going to say like, oh, let's do Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or somebody of that nature.
I don't think you get that in your first day on the job. You get to be Speaker of the House.
I don't think so.
She might think that.
But
she might.
What is this?
Christian thought she's dumb from day one.
You missed the shows where I talked about her. Yeah,
but I would really like to see somebody else hold that position. With all due respect to her, but I think we need a new leader.
I mean, she shouldn't want it, but of course she does because she's a career politician. Even Storage Yard resident says Nancy Pelosi needs to quit. That's a little bit of an inside joke because Storage Yard resident, who's been with us from the beginning, is of course a very right-leaning individual and not a Nancy Pelosi fan. Does anyone here think that Nancy Pelosi should be the Speaker of the House and that she is indeed representative? Okay, well
no.
I do, but I don't. I think she needs to be on and for a limited amount of time. I think, again, the proof is in the pudding there. She's been able to mobilize over the years and get the support of the Democratic Guard. But you could say the same thing about the Republicans when you have the oldest elected president as the leader of your party. So it could go on both sides. I do think that what I've heard is that she would go on but not run for re-election in 2020. So I think there is a changing of the guard. However, most of the people that are in the Democratic Party right now are also older too, like a lot of Republicans. But I think at this point in time, it's probably good for her to be Speaker, and then for her to be able to say, look, in 20, it's time for me to pass the baton to younger
But when Democrats stayed home, that's, the days of when Nancy Pelosi was leader. And so if she... we've got these new fresh blood of voters energized and wanting, for change. And then if you put in such a moderate who she's not going to take up single payer, not even a discussion about it.
I don't know if she will, because I think she's seen the party lean more to the left, and her district is very much in support of it. I think she does need to hand it over, but I think right now you need to get those younger,
2 months? Can we give her 2 months, maybe?
So, well, Tamra, I know that you, to some extent, echoed Scott's sentiment. So, what would you like to say?
I know I'm alone in this, but Brooke was saying earlier, I don't remember what topic, but how we need to, sort of bridge the divide, which is what I say all the time, even though both parties are leaning further away. But I am in favor of the Nancy Pelosi's and Dianne Feinstein's and the moderate, the John McCain's RIP that were able to reach across the aisle. I think those are who we need right now. Even though everybody else is wanting to pull away from each party wants to lean further away.
Therein lies the problem with the Democratic Party. There are people like me that I'm like, that is absolutely not what we should be doing, because that's what we've been doing for the last 30 years. As the right moved right, we moved right also, and so that's how we've gotten so far off.
But this is we're in a very different climate now than 10 years ago.
And the idea that Nancy Pelosi will be Speaker of the House, I think it sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, this idea that Democrats don't have enough stars. We're very celebrity driven, and we're the people that they're talking about running for president. Look, when Barack Obama spoke at the 2004 convention, I think people were like, wait, we got to vote for John Kerry? Can we write in this guy? This guy's great. Speaking of people who's great, we'll be joined in a moment by Drexel Heard. And I know, Brooke, you have to leave shortly.
So Drexel will take my place.
Drexel will trading places. But what I would like to make sure, Brooke, just sort of to get some overall thoughts from you about tonight, and what do you think the important issues should be for Democrats and Republicans over the next 2 years? Just sort of what you think should be the biggest focus.
Well, listen, I think that overall we should all be really happy. He's happy, and I think that a lot of Republicans are happy with that they've retained a lot of these seats that were kind of the big ticket, Gillum, Beto, Abrams, and Democrats should be happy that they took the House. Now we have a true checks and balances system, which I think is really important. I am still, and maybe I am a little more moderate, I do think that we need to start to try to work together and kind of build those bridges instead of tearing each other apart, because we keep just getting further and further apart. And I don't know, maybe that's the Texan coming out in me, living in California.
I like that part.
I would love that. I just don't know that I think the point of us getting further and further away makes it less likely that we will have that. Yeah, I think that the time for that unfortunately has passed, and unfortunately Brooke's time on the show has passed.
I have to go.
If people,
I'm a busy woman.
If people want to keep in touch with you, it's at Brooke Soliz TV.
At Brooke Soliz TV.
And you don't have to just come by when it's midterm elections. You can join us on our regular,
I'm just
our regular
up
Tuesdays
my last
at 4.
year of law school, getting that last year in.
Woohoo.
So that I can be here to start to prepare to campaign for 2020.
That's
as you
right.
guys mentioned.
Soliz 2020.
Exactly. I like the ring up to that.
All right. So we have a great shot set up with the three of you, and then Brooke's about to leave. So and then we'll bring Drexel in after, so people can see him right now who are watching, but we'll talk to him in a moment. Thank you, Brooke. We appreciate it. And Scott, what are you're constantly refreshing and updating.
Just trying
are you seeing any good numbers? Any hard hitting results?
No,
anything that
everything's still too close to call. Looking at the Wisconsin governor's race, it's literally about 1,000 votes apart.
And that's Scott Walker, as always.
Scott Walker and Tony Evers, the Democrats. The Tester Senate race is only 40% reporting, but John Tester is still leading by nearly 4,000 votes. So that's good. So those are the ones I'm waiting on right now, and I'm starting to see the House votes coming in California here on some of those districts that are potentially more Democratic pickups here.
Well, we are in fact joined by the one and only Drexel Heard.
Yay.
Drexel, who at some point this evening texted me, "Oh, I should be there in half an hour. I'm leaving Santa Monica," and we're all like, "Okay, well, we'll see him in about an hour." So that was about right.
I came for the second hour.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That was we kicked Brooke out. No, Brooke was always had to leave at 10.
Time, guys.
And by the way, you know us, but this is Paul K. Daniel next to you. We just met, but for on camera, it doesn't count. And
you know how much I love Republicans in this setting. I've already watched enough to where I was like, oh gosh, it's gonna be like, do I need to throw some Skittles around here?
Wait, did you bring Skittles? Because I forgot to eat before we went on. So that's my mistake.
I only brought them for
Oh my God, I forgot about that. We did that last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
You guys threw Skittles at people?
We didn't throw them. We did?
No,
we just ate them. So, Drexel, because you're coming in now, I'd like just sort of overall thoughts for what we've seen. I mean, I've talked about how the Democrats taking the House, to me, not a surprise. Republicans keeping the Senate, also not a surprise. Individual races, I think there were like one or two that were like, oh, that didn't go. But for the most part, it kind of went the way that, like yesterday, if I had mapped out where I thought it was going to go, it was basically this. What about you? Are you surprised by anything? What are you happiest about as well? Two questions.
I think I'm very happy that Nancy Pelosi will be Speaker of the House again.
Oh, you just missed us.
Just talked about
just talked about what a terrible idea that is.
But I think just overall, obviously, I'm glad the Democrats have taken control of the House.
Let me just interrupt for a second because Juliet has found an amazing photograph. You guys will have to look up to see it, but everybody at home can see smiling President Trump and smiling Nancy Pelosi because, and that's the one thing that I would agree with Tamra's point is she's shown that she's somebody who would at least be wanting to work together to some extent when she's not busy trying to get his tax returns and setting up impeachment hearings and those sort of things. I think issue by issue, she might be like, oh, well, we can work together on that. But anyway, so those are the things you're happy about.
Right. I mean, I think there's some great races across the country that that we can be happy about as well. Chelsea and I were talking earlier about somebody that we interviewed last year on Political Beat, Garland Gilchrist, who I'm sure that Gretchen Whitman has won in Michigan,
yes.
Which makes him the lieutenant governor, which is insane.
He went from
being a city clerk candidate
to
now being lieutenant governor within months.
If you want to find a real charming guy, listen to that guy. He is really charming.
So, yeah.
I think Paul's a charming guy, by the way. I just thought that I should put that on the record.
I happen to be on that episode.
Yeah. You're on that episode.
This guy is really great.
Yeah, that's right. Drexel used to do a show called Political Beat that everyone on the panel was on except me. That's right. And that's why you stopped doing the show so that you didn't have to have me on. But anyway, we're glad that you're here.
Yeah, so I think that there's some really great wins. Obviously, losing the Florida governor's race, losing the Georgia governor's race, I wasn't necessarily like banking on, and I think part of the problem that I saw going into this election, at least for Democrats, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, was that they put all of their eggs in the Beto basket instead of putting their eggs in the red state Democrat basket and trying to protect Heidi and Joe Donnelly. Joe Manchin already was going to basically win after he voted for Brett Kavanaugh, but protecting Claire McCaskill, some of those red state Democrats probably should have been a priority instead of sending all of our money to Texas for a shot.
Did they send all the money, or Beto himself raised
I think
all of that money?
what I mean is Democrats across the country. I mean, Democrats across the country put all of their eggs in this beating Ted Cruz basket instead of saying, oh man, we need to the problem with the Democrats sometimes, and we talk about it all the time, which is we really love somebody, so we put all of our eggs in one basket. Instead of where Republicans are a little bit more strategic, and they'll be like, oh, well, I kind of like this guy, and I kind of like this guy, and maybe they can win, and so we can pull our resources elsewhere, and maybe they will win, maybe they won't win, but at least we have not put everything into one basket. And in this case, we spent so much time talking about 3 races across the country, 2 governors and 1 Senate race, that we forgot about some of the other important races that we needed to protect than just win.
Well, and I think part of that was that, I don't want to say we got complacent, but we thought that the incumbency was going to be enough to put some of them over the edge. Like Donnelly and Claire McCaskill, who had been around for a very long time, and having that incumbency like Joe Manchin, who's been a very popular, he was a former governor of West Virginia, is very popular, statewide recognition, is going to be very hard to topple. And I think a lot of these other ones still, I think that Democrats got caught up thinking that the incumbency was going to hold for the Bill Nelson of Florida, the Claire McCaskill, Missouri, those races, and thought they wanted to focus on the symbolic wins. But, I would say, too, I'm very happy, like we're going back to, about progressive wins again in very red states like Idaho, Utah, Nebraska. All expanded Medicaid tonight as well.
Speaking of Utah, we have Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney, which is not a surprise.
But what a race that was just so okay. Like I feel like he was like a constituent of one. Like he probably didn't have a big rally because like nobody cared. Yeah, like Mitt, you won, great, let's do it.
Do we know anything from West Coast at all?
No, I mean that's why I'm trying to get those results in.
Gavin Newsom.
Well,
our governor.
We've
got Dianne Feinstein
I'm
in California.
actually kind of surprised that the Feinstein was like a 56-40 split between her and De Leon, because I didn't hear anything from De Leon since the primary. I mean, I heard that he had issues raising money, and I still voted for him because I just wanted to push us that way.
You voted for Gavin Newsom or the?
I'm talking about
for Senate.
Oh, for Senate.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think there was enough left-leaning people on the ballot, like down ballot, that people could have picked and choose. Like
Are you talking nationally?
I'm talking about California.
Okay, California.
To where Kevin, of course, was going to pick up a significant amount of people because there were enough left-leaning Democrats on the ballot statewide where he could have made that.
I'm actually surprised Feinstein won because even though I just said I voted for her, but there were so many. Every
voter guide,
leftist voter guide was saying De Leon, to the point where some of them were like, not Feinstein, she's just like vilifying her.
I just think every once in a while you can rotate new people in.
Yeah, I think she should have retired when. I really do. She's 85 years old. She's going to be 91 when her next term ends. It was time for her to retire, but I think, again, she still had name recognition across the entire state. She won every single county against De Leon for the primary.
Sure.
And Republicans didn't have a choice. So if they were voting and they're thinking for them, they're going to vote for Feinstein. So I never thought in doubt that she was going to win.
What I'll say is if she runs again when she's 91, then I think she should definitely, I'll vote for her. Because, at 91, I'm like, I just want to see this. Paul, are you registered to vote in California? Okay.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to know, is there ever a sense as a conservative libertarian that I'm going to go vote, but
what's it doesn't point?
I mean I don't mean literally what's the point, but it can also feel like I know that my vote will be counted because it'll go in the little machine, but it's not going to really make a difference. Is it at all daunting to be in California, or do you maybe focus on some of the down ballot Republicans that maybe do have a chance in the state house or something?
So I kind of look at the full picture. You vote because you should and you want to, and you do it because it's a good thing to do. I'm from a military family, and so voting is very sacred to me just in general. That being said, this state will eventually turn red. I'm confident that it will.
Wow. We're laughing because it got loud.
No, I was laughing at that, actually.
I'm really laughing at that.
I'm laughing because it got loud, so.
That's great. That's fine. I do think eventually things move in swings and pendulums, and I don't think the leftist progressive view is going to answer California's problems. I do not think people will realize in the end that the Silicon Valley, this idea of progressivism that we see and why we see such high debt and unemployment and these drastic disparities with tent cities all over the place and what's happening in San Francisco, progressivism has no answers to those problems.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people responding to that. So before people jump in, what I want to say about times where you would think that, there's obviously a lot of representation of Republicans in California would obviously be Reagan, and then also the recall that led to President Schwarzenegger. Just for fun. Governor Schwarzenegger, which I will say that I don't know how many of those votes were people who believed in him and people who just thought
the recall of Governor Gray.
Yeah, but voting for that, how many people were just like, I can't believe I get to vote for the Terminator. I'm totally going to do it. You know, or people who like, you know, because I do know that his message did respond with, did connect with some people. So those are sort of moments where you see, but there's not really consistent, you know, and again, he's a movie star, so there's something to be said for that. But I don't know if I see California, if that ballot initiative to split the state up into 3 states had passed, I could see some of those individual, like Northwest California or whatever it was, which I don't quite understand why that was taken off the ballot.
Because it was considered unconstitutional. That's why they pulled it.
But I like the idea. We could split all the states into 3 states and have 150 states. Drexel, I felt like something that Paul said, or several things he said, you wanted to address. But I wanted to sort of touch on the point about, you know, Republicans who have done well in California, but it doesn't seem consistent to me. But again, I'm a carpetbagger who's only been here for 15 years. So,
well, as another military brat sitting on the couch who is clearly on the other side and has been on the other side before, I saw the light.
Me too. I was.
Yeah, well, maybe you're still in the dark, buddy.
You guys saw different lights.
We definitely saw different lights.
You guys passed in a tunnel.
We went through different tunnels.
You saw his light, he saw yours.
It was the fork in the road. We saw different lights.
I see the light now. Look, it's purple. Anyway, sorry. We'll let Drexel finish his point.
To kind of just kill that whole idea that Republicans would eventually take over California. Californians have 19 million registered voters, and a majority of them are Democrats. And so the California Democratic Party has done an enormous job of recruiting and talking to voters across the state and making sure that we have this supermajority that we have now. And I don't see that going away anytime in the next decade. So we just won't see that in our lifetime. California won't be there because we have too many. We actually care about people in this state.
Speak for yourself. By the way. Speak for yourself. I don't care about anybody except.
But this idea that San Francisco is littered with tent cities is insane. I was just there and I didn't see any, and it was fine to me. So it's almost like that caravan talk that that Republicans are talking about now. It's like you just say shit and you see if it sticks, and there you go.
So the caravan doesn't exist? I'm confused.
I don't think the caravan exists in the way that.
Do we want to go there?
I don't think the caravan. I don't think the caravan exists the way that Republicans
go into the caravan when we have 45 minutes left. So, but
just sure about that, the state will turn red. It'll happen in a way that I don't think most people will expect. This will be a longer conversation, of course, but I do think the same way people couldn't understand why Trump won, in the very same way that you will see in our lifetimes, 100%, you will see it change.
I mean, I just think that when you have 100%. The centers like Los Angeles and San Francisco that are, they completely negate like the Orange counties and Riverside counties, and so I think if there's a huge population shift in some way, but also, if you are worried about the caravan coming here and voting, do you think they're voting for Republicans?
Well, also
because so that's what I'm saying. So like, if they are coming, they're not going to vote. They're definitely not going to turn red. But that is more tongue in cheek than an actual.
I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but the fact that California is already so forward when it comes to green energy conservation and green initiatives and trying to,
You just mean progressive ideals in general.
But especially when it comes to anything environmental. And as California is being affected by, like, fire season is now year round, and that's personally affecting more and more people's lives, which will have an even further impact on making, individuals who maybe are denying climate change to come around to it when it's forcing them out of their home in the middle of the summer when it's 125 degrees outside. So that's an example of why I don't think California would ever go red.
Did you just relate climate change to migration?
No, not at all. I wasn't even talking about migration.
That's how Republicans think. They try to leave it all together.
The only thing I will say that I agree with you.
Wait.
We definitely don't want to get bogged down in this. So you guys can have one more back and forth on this, and then what Scott wants to say. So go ahead, Tamra.
Well, that is an example. I don't see where you pulled immigrant from that at all.
I didn't say immigrant. I said actually migration when you said when it's 125 degrees and it forces people to change their location. I was just actually trying to clarify.
I was saying when it's 125 degrees in the summertime.
Yeah.
And which starts a fire where there wasn't previously fires, so we have to move out of our homes where we currently live right now.
Got it. I was just clarifying.
I'm glad we got the clarification.
But what I was asking, though, is that's an example of why I think the state will definitely stay blue. So I was wondering what you say that it's definitely going to go red, but I want to understand why.
Scott, what were you going to say?
Well, my only point was that I would agree with Paul in the sense that maybe in 40 or 50 years from now, it might, when the parties have changed, like what happened in the South when conservative Democrats flipped to Republicans, if down the line in a generation or two things shift, then yes, I could see Republicans having an in back in California. But the way that the Republican Party, the National Republican Party is now, does not square with the majority of Californians. And I would say that, Texas and other states in the South are going to go Democratic first before we ever see California go back to being statewide, consistently red at the presidential and the state level. That just won't happen relatively soon until the parties change.
I want to read a few comments from the chat from one person that they actually all tie into this. Again, it's Dr. Who Geek, who I still feel like you're looking for a different show, but thank you for watching us. But the Doctor Who after show is on AfterBuzz. It's Sundays.
People can only
at
like
9
one
o'clock.
thing.
Look, it's in the name, so I want to make sure that I help promote the other show on the network. Sundays at 9. But the point was that she said that I'm a Republican who voted for all Democrats this time. So I saw that comment and I said, can you please explain why? Because that's very interesting to me. So her response was, I'm a Puerto Rican living in a conservative county, and the racism I saw after Trump got elected convinced me to vote Democrat. I don't recognize the Republican Party anymore for me anyway. Not so much a comment on what she said, but first of all, I appreciate you sharing those thoughts because I wanted to know why. I do think you still have a lot of people who the Trump Republican Party is not their Republican Party, people who are maybe sitting out on the sidelines. But it didn't seem like this was an election, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that people didn't back away from President Trump the way that I think some people might have expected. Maybe you have a couple of instances where people we're like, well, I'm not going to do that photo op or not that thing. But in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Republicans didn't really run away from President Trump.
No, I think you're right about that. I think in large part we saw with the Senate pickups in the wins today, we saw those that actually stood by him, whether it's Mike Braun or those that, and Ron DeSantis, and those who actually stuck by the more MAGA agenda were the ones who benefited. The ones who actually backed away and tried to play the moderate kind of Republican, the ones who said, no, we don't embrace the wall. No, we're not going to say this. No, we're going to kind of be a little bit on both sides. Lost in House races, in other ways, or they took a different stance, or they decided, if I get too close to the president, if I ride his coattails, it might affect me.
And I mean, we've seen that with you saw that with Obama. You definitely saw it with George W. Bush. I mean, and that's just in recent. That's just the last two. I'm just using them as examples. There's plenty of examples. Sure. So I thought that that's what we were going to see in the midterms, and I was a little surprised. Drexel, do you think that maybe my interpretation is wrong, and people did really put some distance between themselves and the president?
No, I think that there was something to be learned from what happened to President Obama in 2010 when Democrats tried to distance themselves from the presidency, who was very popular at the time. And I think that Donald Trump is very popular within the Republican Party, so you can't run away from that voter. Democrats did that, and then we got almost, we basically lost both chambers of House. Shellacked, as Barack Obama said at the time. So I think that was very smart. Republicans just learned the strategy from that situation. Ron DeSantis winning in Florida just irks me because you got somebody in that governor's house that didn't even want to be the governor of Florida. So it's kind of sad to see.
I mean, would you want to be the governor of Florida?
Well, I just
thank you. Scott's from Florida. I appreciate that.
I just meant you definitely whether or not it's Republican or Democrat, you definitely want somebody who wants to be in the job. Ron DeSantis barely campaigned for his job. and he could barely get through debates. He did the bare minimum, other than say Donald Trump's name, to get by in this win. And yeah, and if that works for Florida, that's going to work for Florida. I think we'll see what happens in 2020 after Amendment 4 is passed. I heard you guys talking about it earlier. It's always very funny and very hypocritical when Republicans talk about felons getting their rights back, but at the same time have no problem with domestic abusers getting their guns back at the same time. So it's that argument that people are always trying to.
One's the Second Amendment.
One's the Second Amendment. One's the right to vote.
Because I feel like that was kind of directed at Paul.
Yeah,
I'd like to give him a moment.
I don't know why.
Well,
I get the comparisons of like all Republicans do this. I'm not really sure why. We had a nice individual conversation about when Chelsea asked, "What do you think about the felonies?" And I said, "Well, I would like to look at each individual case and then go from there." I didn't make a broad, sweeping generalization. If I did, correct me. But I don't think I did.
This was definitely a generalization about Republican hypocrisy. Did I say you?
Did I talk about
sitting
you?
here
next to you.
I'm saying Republicans in general.
You're not Republican.
Exactly.
That is libertarian votes Republican.
Right. So what we're saying is that Republicans in general, the hypocrisy on that issue is that Republicans certainly did not want Amendment 4 to pass for obvious reasons, because they felt that that felons would come out and vote for Democrats. But that's not always going to be the case, because I'm sure there are some Republican felons out there. To say that Democrats are only felons is crazy.
I think some of them were on the Trump transition team. Thank you.
Exactly. And they will be very soon.
Can we talk,
but I know you wanted to say something.
I would like to talk about Florida in that I'm thinking about the Parkland students tonight, and how amazing it is that they stepped up and tried to bring the whole generation into the political process. I'm really proud of them for that. And then I don't know who they voted for governor and such, but I could just imagine that. If I were them, I probably would have voted for Gillum, most likely, and that I might feel so disappointed to be from a generation that's like, oh, we want something, we have it, so we woke up. We realized that politics is an issue. We need to get involved. They did a lot and then still lost. And so I am concerned that maybe that they'll think, well, we got involved and we tried and we failed, and so we're just going to go back to, God, I don't know what the kids are up to these days, so, but insert cool thing that kids are doing.
Oh, you just said kids these days. Welcome to being old, Chelsea. Congratulations.
Thanks. But so I just want to say to them and to other Democrats too, who are just getting into the political process, that expected that, one election, you get involved, you get out there, you march, and you post on Facebook that you voted, and you ask other people to vote, that was going to change everything. And I would encourage people to look at democracy like a discipline. Like, you can't be, off with your In-N-Out or what's the other burger places?
Shake Shack.
Yeah, like way off, just like crazy diet. Straighten out for like a week.
I've never had.
And expect that democracy is going to get restored and back completely on track. So I just hope that people hang in there and see this is a first good step in getting back into democracy, and to make it a discipline, a habit, and not a hobby, because we can't turn things around in just one election.
I got to say, I posted something a couple weeks ago, because there's an organization I work with there. Before the Parkland students were even on the cover of Time magazine, this generation of teenagers is way more active, way more mobilized before the Parkland shooting happened. Like, they're just a more civically active generation, more so than mine was.
A little bit of Bernie
certainly more than
there.
Certainly more than mine. I don't know how much Bernie has to do with it, but I think that he did,
young people,
for some reason,
process.
Someone that old from Vermont really connected with young people. Absolutely. But what was your point, Tamra?
Well, and then also, to that, when what was that rally a couple months ago that Jeff Sessions organized for he spoke at for high school students, and they got
I don't remember what it was called,
80
but I do,
teenagers from across the country, and it just shows that as the younger generations are more civically active than the older generations are, and as the largest baby boomer generation continues to pass away, the country is just moving more progressive.
Well,
that's just how it's going to go.
Speaking with messaging aimed at younger voters, I want to talk about something that's very important to Drexel. Drexel, what do you think about a lack of a Taylor Swift effect in this election?
Listen. You know how I feel about Taylor Swift.
That's why I brought it up.
I appreciate...
I don't know how you feel about Taylor Swift.
Oh, that's true.
Let me tell you. I am an events person. We just got married a few weeks ago. So Taylor Swift has always been banned at every event that I ever do.
Yeah, I'm like that with Coldplay.
You know? And
we all have our thing, you know?
And, you know, I'm appreciative of what she did for Phil, or what she attempted to do for Phil Bredesen. In Tennessee.
But he did lose by 26 points.
Right, so maybe it had the opposite effect.
So could he have lost by 15 points if she had just kept her mouth shut?
No, I think that if Taylor Swift got folks to sign up to vote that certainly were not, then good on her. And I think that more people of public influence, because a lot of these influencers, whether or not you are a celebrity or a YouTube star or a Instagram star, any of those people that have influence over a block of people, should take the opportunity to speak out as best they can, because they have an audience to do so. And
well, when you encourage people to vote, you know, to register to vote, I think that's great. But are you encouraging them to vote
against somebody
for the person you want to vote for?
But
which, you know, look, I think if Antonio Sabato Jr. were telling people to register to
reference.
vote, well, that's look.
Right.
I work with Dennis Miller, so, you know, look, it's a short list. I could have thrown Kelsey Grammer out there, but I thought Antonio Sabato Jr. was funnier. You know, he's going to say register to vote, but, you know, to vote for Ted Cruz, you know. So is that really what the message is register to vote, but, you know, stay home if you're not going to vote the way I want you to? Is it important for that generation to vote, regardless of who they vote for? If they want to vote for Marsha Blackburn, you know, it's like, thanks, Taylor, for sending me to the polls, but I'm not going to vote the way you want me to.
I think at first when young people get involved, they go to their mom and dad. Who should I vote for? And so
I've never done that. Sorry.
No. Oh, okay.
No.
So
I'd say a lot of kids would vote the way their parents did, because they don't. That's what they kind of were ingrained with and they grew up with, and a lot of times it takes a while for them to change direction from what their parents voted for. Because I'll say the same thing. I mean, my parents were Republican hardcore growing up and in the South, and took a couple election cycles for me to
see the light.
Come to the But I will say,
There's a lot of light happening. It's the same light that Drexel
but I will say,
it's like Laser Floyd. You all get to see a little something different.
I think regardless, encouraging young people to vote and get in the habit of voting at, you know, regardless of who they vote for, I think is great. Because the more people that participate in the democracy, the better our democracy is, whether I agree with their vote or not. I think encouraging people to sign up and register to vote and become lifelong voters is more important at the end of the day than who they're voting for in this election, per se, of what they do in a lifetime of voting and participating.
Let me give you at least a little conservative perspective, at least on this. I'm all for people having a voice, if you want to have a voice, and people will listen freely or not. What I will say, though, is that the identity politics card, which was very evident in this, which people are rejecting in
sorry,
large,
evident in a specific race? Or
specific,
just...
and I'll get to it.
Okay,
Specifically,
sure.
say with Stacey Abrams.
Okay.
The almost first woman black governor of Georgia, right? There was so much attention, or Andrew Gillum, maybe the first black governor of Florida. Zero attention on John James, could have been the first black governor of Michigan. Zero. From the media, no attention whatsoever. People see this when they go, wait a minute, why are you guys so obsessed with race when it comes to these things, but not a single mention? Why isn't Oprah saying, you know what, we almost had the first black governor.
Wait, hold on.
I'm sorry, senator.
Can I push back
Michigan.
slightly on that?
Sure.
The Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum were progressive
That's
policies.
my point. So when you paint the world and when you use identity politics and you say it's basically just because vote for our party, though.
That's not
people
true.
see
I
through
like,
that.
I like the policies, not...
Wait, Chelsea first, and then Drexel, and then
Wait,
go
but
back to
you're
Zero
saying that
coverage
this
on
is
John James.
Hang on a second.
But for me, it's not it wasn't a racing. I agree with the progressive policies.
Oh, no. And that's what I'm saying. It's fine. I'm totally saying, let me be upfront and clear, that if you agree with someone's policies, you agree with their policies. What I'm saying is when they highlight the fact, from an identity politics standpoint, that this person could be the first black woman governor or the first black senator or whatever it may be, it's normally just only but it's only if you agree with that party. So you could have had a first black senator in John James, but
because
it was
the
never
other party,
mentioned
that's not a...
because he's a conservative. So the truth is, it's not really about
It's not going to hook anybody.
Breaking that mold?
No, that's not true. It's Mia Love in Utah.
That's what I just said.
No,
Mia Love
but John James is a really big deal that got zero.
I'm talking about Mia Love as a Republican in
Here's
Utah.
the problem. Did John James?
No, when she became, they made a big deal about that.
Oh, absolutely.
They made a huge deal about that. So,
no. But did John James? Here's the thing. Did John James get the attention from the right? Because I don't remember them pushing his name out there.
They did.
I don't remember seeing John James on anywhere.
And Tim Scott, South Carolina.
I also don't remember seeing Garland Gilchrist as a lieutenant governor, as a black lieutenant governor of Michigan, being somebody that we talked about.
Conservatives don't view the world that way, though.
But what I'm saying is neither do Democrats. I think
there is.
No, I think. Here's
Hillary Clinton ran on that.
Hillary
breaking the glass ceiling
because there hasn't been a woman president before.
Right. We don't.
Right.
All right. So Drexel, finish your thought, and then
the
Paul
problem
can respond.
The problem with that line of thinking is this idea that Democrats think of that first, as if we don't know how to go through policy first and then go, but the icing on the cake is this is what we get on the other side of that. We get this great progressive candidate, but it just so happens that they also was a first of something, because America loves first. When it comes to baseball, when it comes to like the Dodgers winning something, like we love these ideas of something that's fresh and new, and that's what we love. But this idea that in your eyes, and this is, I say the same thing about Bernie Sanders when he talks about getting identity politics out of it. It's not something that Democrats are making the first thing that comes out of our mouth.
For some reason, a lot of people get the sense that it is, even if we think that it's
not.
not.
And that's fine, because that's the narrative that's being pushed out.
No, it's not. I'm just trying to explain that I can completely separate and delineate between, I agree with this person's policies, and they happen to be this.
But you're also assuming that we can't either.
I'm not assuming. There's a lot of words being put in my mouth that I'm not saying.
Well, no, you are, because you're saying that, and you said that it's not the same on the Republican side, where Tim Scott,
what I'm saying
Republican
is,
South Carolina had the same thing.
Paul, go ahead, and we will move on after Paul has the last word on this.
What I was just merely saying was, it would be nice if outside of, if it's going to be played that way in a sense, right, where you say, okay, well, we're happy that this new first is made, which is good. I think we can all agree that's good. But what's interesting is that there's no, and maybe it's a sign of the times, maybe it's a bigger issue, maybe it's a culture issue, maybe it's because the parties are so at each other, maybe it's something deeper than that. What I'm saying is, I don't think Tim Scott and Mia Love are it's an apples to orange comparison to what I'm trying to say, because currently right now running was John James, who no one was talking about, and he could have been the first black senator of Michigan. And so when
But wouldn't the Democrats pushing that have been playing exactly into what you're saying, that we're all about race?
No, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I was just giving you another perspective from a conservative standpoint, that when it comes to sometimes the identity politics being so prevalent in what we see as, okay, they're Oprah's over in stumping for Abrams, right? Will Ferrell's out there. We were talking about celebrities. We started with Taylor Swift. What I was saying was, there's no love from, say, Common to, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't agree with John James on his politics because he's a conservative and I'm more progressive, but he could be the first black senator in Michigan.
But that's not.
I think you're making our point.
Fine. Yeah. No. Okay. Maybe.
I was just reading that apparently President Trump spoke with Nancy Pelosi tonight. He congratulated her and said, I'm going to admit that I didn't actually hear her speech because, I didn't want to watch it. But also I was busy.
I tried to hand him.
Yeah, I was just like, I can't hear that voice. And she apparently spoke about bipartisanship. If she's serious and he's serious, that would be great to see them.
Is there any man that you have said, I can't hear that voice?
I was about to say the exact same thing, Chelsea.
Drexel Heard? No. Look, she has an annoying one. Why did you both gang up on me? Because she has an annoying voice.
People constantly, they only point it out when it's a woman.
I mean, only a woman named Nancy Pelosi sounds that way. So no, I don't like the sound of her voice. I also don't like
the sound of the voice of men, and that's what when you listen to them?
What men are you talking about? Mike Pence? Not particularly.
Donald Trump? Definitely not.
Donald Trump? No, well, Donald Trump makes me laugh every once in a while.
I can't.
So, But, so anyway.
Was that a little too identity for you?
No, I don't
coming up.
I don't give a shit.
I'm looking at Paul. Like, we don't see the world in terms of gender and race. Everybody is all the same and equal, and we all come from the exact same.
Bakari Sellers on CNN the other night. I'm black. Just to let you know. I don't want you to be confused.
No, to be fair, there are people that are consuming this as a podcast, so maybe people didn't know Drexel. So thank you.
Yes, I just want to clarify that.
Should we, as we go?
I'm 1% Native American.
That means you can't vote.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that Elizabeth Warren was reelected. So good for her. There's not really anywhere to go with that. It's just because you mentioned you were one. Are you actually saying that, or was it a joke?
Well, it was a joke, but I actually am.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure which one.
Identifying ourselves.
I'm mostly Danish since we're playing that at the moment. And Shareable Texas makes a great point. Thanks, Shareable Texas. I hate the sounds of Mitch McConnell. I'm not particularly fond of that voice.
Oh, I hate Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham. Yeah. So
he had.
I'm trying to think.
Polio, so
let me just try and.
Ted Cruz is really.
I'm trying.
I didn't know that actually.
I'm trying to think of Democratic men that I don't like.
No, Lindsey Graham.
What about Lindsey Graham?
I said I hated Lindsey Graham's voice.
Oh, Lindsey Graham's voice. Yeah, you can hate the sound of his voice, regardless of that. So here we are.
Wait, can I ask Scott something that he may or may not know? So we're going to see in the House, there's going to be Democratic chairs of various.
Committees?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
My rep, Adam Schiff, will be the chair of
could be the
Intel.
next speaker, too. There's been talk about him eventually.
I'm a big fan of Adam Schiff.
That's been discussed a little bit.
I find his voice annoying. I don't like to hear him speak.
Thank you. See? I'm just asking you to be even with it.
Shoot. I remember reading articles over the months like, if the Democrats flip the House, this person will leave.
Maxine Waters is going to be in charge of the finance.
Yeah,
that's going to be fun.
Yes,
that's going to be fun.
It's going to be fireworks. It's going to be great.
She's going to be in charge. Yeah. Well, she spends her money responsibly, so why not? Yeah. Let's
are there any other good chairs to be looking forward to?
Well, I think that's going to be my favorite because that's going to, Aunt Maxine.
I'll just give you guys a heads up that Adam Schiff and a lot of these people are going to have, and this is a way longer conversation, but I wouldn't hold my breath on them holding a lot of different chairs of things. I think there's going to be a lot of news that's going to break now that the midterms are over that involve a lot of different investigations. The flip side of what most of my liberal friends do not know when it comes to the Spygate and different things that have happened, watching the news for what's going to happen with Adam Schiff.
Let's
something's
brewing. Like some Jacob Walsh.
Yeah. I'm very interested in that. So when that breaks,
you're not talking about Mueller.
It's very much connected. He was part of the Gang of Eight, and he was briefed, right?
John
Brennan. Yes.
Okay.
John Brennan sat with each one of them and individually briefed them, which has never happened before, on kind of all the things that have happened. And we can go into this. I don't mean to take up the time. And it's a very, 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 very long tale, which is excellent and most fun. But Adam Schiff does not have clean hands.
Okay.
And you can see it when he's kind of talking recently about certain things. And
this
especially
is way too vague.
Regarding what?
Well, let's just say, we'll move on, but is there one issue? Is there one issue you can point to? I was trying to get him to just say one, and then we can move past it.
It's in relation to the Mueller probe.
Okay.
And in the entire Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, FISA, and everything that was going on.
Okay.
So there is a lot that actually is going to come out in these things.
I'm sure
I hope it does.
Sure. It does.
And
Democrats tend to be on the right side of those investigations, so I'm going to put my cards in the Adam Schiff basket.
I don't trust anybody.
Adam Schiff, also a military family, by the way.
I'm curious, how did you hear about all this when none of the rest of us?
Tons of research.
That's
one of the things that I researched.
Is there a site or a couple of sites that you look at?
There's tons of different journalists. I don't know how much time.
So when we move on from something, it means we don't go back in on it.
No, Chelsea, I'll tell you after. But there's a lot.
All right.
There's a lot to the story that would concern everybody when it comes to kind of what's going to be breaking.
Hey, I hope you're right.
True.
I mean, because if he's done something wrong, I would sure like him to get in trouble for it. Absolutely.
George Papadopoulos, it's been proven now, the entire Russian narrative was built on the fact that he met with Joseph Mifsud, who was a Russian agent. He wasn't a Russian agent. He was Western intelligence, which is the entire predicate for the Russia investigation. And if you don't know that, that's 2 years of research. I could sit down and talk to you about it. But the entire Russia investigation is hinging on George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. And it turns out that those two things are not true. They are not what they seem. Joseph Mifsud was not a Russian agent.
Can I ask you, did Russia meddle in the election?
Not in this is so beyond what you're. This is a longer conversation. So Christian, you can
just like a yes or no, like you don't.
No, the Facebook ads. The Facebook ads are nothing compared to what I'm talking about. The $50,000, $100,000 Facebook ads have nothing to do with what actually happened, and there's going to be a lot of stories that are going to break.
I think we've gotten a little in the weeds on this, so we definitely need to take a look.
Plenty of time for that.
All right. What we need to do is take a look, and we only have a little bit of time left.
See, I told you we ran out of time. Always.
We always run out of time, and but we're not there yet. But we're going to run out of time. So what I wanted to sort of look towards is the next 2 years. So where do you go from this? You have divided government. To some extent, I mean, Republicans still have the Senate. So as we were talking about earlier, a lot of things will stop right there in the House, and then the Senate won't pick them up. And how productive, Drexel, do you think these next 2 years will be? And I mean, just in general, not how productive will they be for the president, how productive, just overall in terms of legislation getting passed and new laws and things. Do you feel like it's really just a recipe for some new gridlock?
Oh, I absolutely think there's nothing going to be passed.
Okay.
There's nothing going to hit the president's desk.
That's unfortunately where I
think the only thing that'll hit the president's desk, of course, is a funding bill that has to keep the government open. Democrats have to pass, will have to pass a funding bill or a continuing resolution or whatever to kind of get the government going. Democrats don't want to be the ones that are, shutting down the government.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to.
I just meant like they don't want that narrative out there.
Right,
so they're going to have to come up with the compromise to figure that piece out. I think it's going to be very good for Republican judges and appointments over the next couple of years. But it'd also be very good to see some investigations going on in the House in terms of oversight, actual oversight of the executive branch. So I think that's if that is what needs to happen, actual oversight, then yeah, I think it'd be a productive couple of years. But on Thursday, after everybody takes a breath, the general election starts. So I don't know that it's going to be like, I don't know that.
Can we get the weekend?
Right.
Do you think
I
we can
don't
just go
know.
to Monday?
I mean, basically, the next few people are going to be gearing up for the next campaign.
Figuratively putting up our Christmas election decorations.
Right. We'll hear our first slate of candidates in the next few months, and that'll be it. By April we'll have our big name person, a couple of people on the Democrat side. So I think it'll be at least between now and April. Something.
I think you were coming in when it was right before you came in when I said that. I can't imagine this, narrative that sprung up in the last few hours that Beto O'Rourke is someone who should be running for president. Do you think him, and if not him, who are these stars of the Democratic Party who have a good chance to rise up and take on President Trump, or as Scott would contend, President Pence?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Because the impeachment clock still counted. Where are we at there, by the way?
Even Paul's face is horrified by the idea of a President Pence.
No, that's not what that was for.
Oh, okay.
That's because it's going to go the other way.
It's good. Well, wait. Where's to answer my question? Where's the impeachment clock right now?
It's still where it is, 11:58. Because again, I think what's going to come out with investigations is either going to make it so difficult for Republicans to continue to back Trump. And like I said all along, if he doesn't think he's going to win re-election, he's not going to run again. He's going to resign. There's a lot of other things that are going to come up, I think, like you were saying about investigation, I think, with Trump. And that's the thing that I'm looking forward to, too, is to see what's next on Mueller's indictment list, what's going to happen now with people in Trump's staff. Is Attorney General going to be gone now that they've held the Senate? Who's going to be leaving next in the administration? Because now that's going to be the next focus. It's going to shift to who's leaving all the departures in the White House. And also what's going to happen now with the Mueller investigation, because He's kept it pretty quiet because of the election. Now the election's done, what's going to start coming out with that as well. So that's going to be the big news now heading into next week.
Let's pull one level of inception back to my earlier question, though, which was, Drexel, who are these stars of the Democratic Party? Is it Beto O'Rourke?
Well, I don't think that Beto would have run, even if, like, he's not Barack Obama. Like, Barack Obama was Barack Obama was a state senator turned senator who gave the Democratic National Committee speech, and everybody was like, this is the guy, right? And then he kind of was the guy, but then there was Hillary Clinton in the mix. You didn't know what was going to happen, and that was 2008. So Beto doesn't have to go through any of that right now.
Right.
But I also don't think the Democrats would want to put him in a position, had he won the Texas Senate race, to pull him from Texas to have to redefend that Texas Senate seat again. So I think that I had a panel discussion the other day on race in America,
which you also didn't invite me to. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking about race in America, and I told the audience, I said, look. I said, do not choose, and this is just for everybody, do not choose your candidate between now and 2020, June of 2020, because you just don't know what's going to happen. The Democrats right now have a significant amount of really qualified people that we could just put up. It could be anybody. Here in California, Eric Garcetti's running for president.
But do you think he's running this time, or just one day?
No, he's going to be running for president this next cycle.
Okay.
The problem is that everybody is also looking at Kamala Harris. Two Californians can't run for president at the same time. Kamala, on the other hand, may say, you know what I'm going to do? And I know people love Kamala Harris, but she might say, I just want to court somebody for the VP slot. That's something I can do because I know my seat is a safe D seat, and I don't have to do anything, and I can just either run for VP and not have to worry about it. So Kamala Harris is not. She might dip her toe in the water, but that is just so she could be on somebody's ticket at some point.
2 years ago, I think there was a lot of talk about Cory Booker. Is he still considered? Is his stock still high in the Democratic Party? That's what I was wondering.
I think Barack Obama really wants the former governor of Massachusetts,
Mitt Romney.
No, Deval Patrick to run, but Deval Patrick has been out of the game for so long that I don't know that he has the name recognition for that. So I think that I love Amy Klobuchar. I love I know that Governor Hickenlooper from Colorado is going to run. So I think that there are some people out there that are going to be less recognizable names, but I don't think that the Democrats have a choice but to, unfortunately, put up somebody in a minority status as their front runner.
I mean, but can you imagine trying to get the Hickenlooper bumper sticker on your car?
Yeah, that's
you get the small big font,
right?
So
it's gonna have to be first name only.
Paul, you hear all these names thrown around. Does any of it sound like the sort of thing that the Trump camp should be focused on? Should they be worried about anybody in the Democratic Party, or do they feel like his tweet said that this was a really good night tonight because we held on to the Senate and we're kind of primed for another victory in 2020?
So I would say, no one's going to beat Trump. No one has the skill set when it comes to, when I look at the Democratic Party and I think of who could be potential players that would try, either it's Kamala or Cory or anyone else running. No one has the mass appeal that Trump has in regards to his rallies and how he can bring so many different types of people together in the Republican Party, 90% approval rate in the GOP, and he just brought together, he just made it Trump's Republican
I'm not even asking
Party.
this in a gotcha way. We're 90% in the GOP. I'm surprised. Mm-hmm. I'm just mentioning legitimate reaction. I can't believe it's that high just because I know where it was 2 years ago. I knew a lot of
the Never Trumpers.
The Never Trumpers 100%. Who are still Never Trumpers, but they're like, well, Never Trumpers, but maybe next time I'll be a Trumper. I don't know. Yeah.
And so I think now with what he's been able to do and with the economy and with different things, he's even galvanizing it even more. And we've never seen him front running. He's always been behind.
No, that's true.
So when you notice in the primaries, when he was taking on the 16 different Republican candidates during the primary, he was always on his heels, but still staying ahead of everyone and beating them one by one. We've never seen him out in front. When he's out in front, he's more confident. He's even funnier. And then it becomes even
that man.
I mean, as a skill set, it becomes something that's very tough to beat because it is really hard to beat that. And then I would say the second thing is that what I mentioned earlier about the Spygate, about what's
let's
happening.
Definitely not spend too much time on that.
Is going to drastically affect the shape of the Democrat Party even the Republican. It's going to drastically affect kind of politics in the next couple of months.
Okay.
The Democratic Party.
But what I have a question for you. But if you feel like you would like to use your time with what you're about to say, you can do that. But I wanted to know, what do you think is most important in the next 2 years? And I know you have a lot of notes that you haven't even gotten to.
No, those were my notes as I was watching. But what I guess we were going to, your question speaks to what I was going to say.
Perfect.
Which is this, that people are going to keep their eye on the economy because that's what's really important to people. And as I've been saying in the last couple of weeks, just know this, the economy is on its way down. It was going to be on its way down, whether Republicans held both the House and the Senate, whether the Democrats took both of them, or as we've gotten here, 1-1. The economy, this cycle is already on its way down. And no matter how many times Trump says the economy is going down because of Democrats, it's not because of Democrats. It's because that's where we are in the cycle. So I think if we can just scream that from the rooftop so that people do not blame Democrats for the impending recession. I mean, some economists are saying it's going to be a big one, but the majority of economists agree that by 2020, we will be in a recession. And economists didn't say this, I did, and it will not be the Democrats' fault.
So are you saying that I should not have just bought 100,000 shares of Snapchat? This was probably not something that I
should have asked me first.
I only buy anything in Bitcoin, Tamara.
No, I know.
Tamara,
that's why I was just pointing. I was clarifying.
Just because not everybody knows. Tamara, just sort of personally, what do you think we should see, or what would you like to see? I'll let you take either slant on that over these next 2 years, from Democrats or Republicans or both.
Oh, I want to see Trump's. I'm glad you mentioned his sense of humor because, man, especially when he's making fun of disabled people, is he on point? That man and his impressions. Put him on Saturday Night Live.
Well, I mean, the guy who plays him on Saturday Night Live probably shouldn't be on Saturday Night Live right now. But
no, his sense of humor exists only in saying somebody's name twice, right? Lamb the Sham, am I right? Lamb the Sham, and then his supporters all laugh.
By the way, he won tonight.
Yeah.
Lamb the Sham won?
Yes, Lamb the Sham won tonight.
All right, so is that something you want to see more of in the next 2 years? I'm not quite sure.
I can't get enough of that man's sharp wit.
All right. I'm not sure if that's an entirely sincere answer, but I'm a tough read on this sort of thing. Scott, what do you think we need to see between now and 2020? Or what would you like to see?
Well, at least I'm happy about that Obamacare is here to stay. That's not going anywhere now because the House winning will protect that, so that's great. I have to say that seeing how closely divided even these election results tonight are, it's absolutely fascinating to see just how evenly divided this country is. I mean, right down, like, I'm seeing, these governor races here, even the House races in California that have been on the Republican side. They're all hundreds hundreds, thousands, just 1,000 votes off.
Katie Hill and
Steve Knight are right, like, neck and neck right now.
Dana Rohrabacher and Harley
Same thing,
Ruda.
all like right there. And it's same thing with Wisconsin governor race, the Iowa governor race.
That surprises me a little bit that here we are. So what is it? It's almost 11 o'clock. So that's 1 a.m. in Wisconsin, right? And that Wisconsin governor's race is still not called.
It's literally less than 1,000 votes apart right now.
Where are they at? Like 99%?
98% reporting.
And is he up or
Tony
down?
Evers is up by like less than and that 1,000 votes. And it's fascinating to see that. So I will say it won't take much for Trump if he is running again to lose, because like you said, he won by such a weird path through the Electoral College that it will only take a couple of those states, especially if the economy starts dropping, to flip back to Democrats. Because we already know that there's going to be a majority of states that are going to vote Democrat and Republican. You just have those Midwest states and Florida and some of those bigger states that will have bigger turnout, and also Senate is going to really be in the Democrats' favor in 2020. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Again, right now we have the Republican had the good math for this year, but in 2020 that's really going to shift in Democrats' favor. And seeing it that's so close, I'm going to be fascinated to see how those numbers are going to come out in the next couple of years.
Do you think that the Democrat in 2020 will, at some point, speaking of Wisconsin, set foot in that state and maybe do a little campaigning there? Do you think that they might have learned something?
Well, and I think, seeing how...
Are you referring to something in particular?
No, just he was talking about Wisconsin.
Well,
so
and I was thinking Wisconsin and Michigan, and you saw Michigan go way back to the Democratic column tonight.
And there are a lot. I have a lot of friends in Michigan on my Facebook feed, which I don't think I realized quite how many I had. Yeah. And some of them are very upset that it's gone back in that direction.
Yeah,
it's more of like a "will you never learn." So Michigan is one of those really. It's just such a strange state because. I guess people are so dug in on both sides. It's almost like ping pong. It just goes back and forth between those two parties, and no one's ever happy. And you still can't drink the water in Flint. That's a little bit of a tangent, of course, but
I think an important one though.
But I'm excited by most of the results tonight. I think that they are going in the right direction. Again, when you see minimum wage, but voting wins handily, Medicaid expansion wins handily. When you saw LGBT candidates win, when you see women winning
first openly gay governor elected in Colorado.
When you see those type of things, I do see that it does make me feel a little bit more positive about this country now than where we were in 2016 and the direction that we're going in. And younger people are voting. Again, those numbers were really great for the midterms, seeing people come out. So I feel really good that we're trending in the right direction here, and it's slow, but we're getting there.
And I would say, and yet, I would agree with that. And yet, after tonight, I think it's more likely that Trump will be reelected than I believed yesterday.
I'm sort of interested to pull on that thread as to. I mean, because I thought
Don't be excited. I'm not happy about
I thought he was going to be reelected yesterday and the week before. But what makes you? I'm just curious. What's different? And we only have a couple minutes. But what's different today that makes you feel that way? Would it have taken like Democrats winning the Senate to make you feel otherwise?
The size of the wins, was pretty small.
Right.
Okay. Like it was still so close. Mm-hmm. I had expected that when people come out to vote, that the Democratic wins would have been bigger, and because they weren't, that's why I believe Trump has a better chance of winning 2020.
All right, so we sort of went all the way around, and I feel like because a lot of those predictions were one-sided, Paul, is there anything you'd like to sort of readdress at this point? Anything that any things that the other panelists said that they were excited for that maybe you're not excited for?
Well, no. Once again, I think I stand by. I haven't seen anyone. Maybe someone will surprise that could take on someone like Trump, who has to have as many different skill sets as Trump has, which he has.
Is he a five-tool player? If he were a Major League Baseball player, would he have hits, home runs, steals?
No, but what I mean is like
narcissism
he could pitch an inning.
All sorts of these personality disorders.
I'm trying to keep it a little lighter, but what she said.
These are skills.
No, it's really
gaslighting.
Hard to replicate a 100,000 RSVP in Texas. Or whenever he does his rallies, he has thousands and thousands of people, 20,000 crowds, 20,000 people waiting outside, spending 4 a.m. That's like a different status, it's becoming something different. It's becoming a movement that most political pollsters and people try in focus groups to try to replicate. They wish they could have that. Obama had it. They wish they could have that kind of, it's effortless to be able to draw where he's drawing in the places
sex appeal,
that he's
I think, is what you're looking for.
I mean, he's a very attractive man.
He's
raw, human.
But again, from my opinion,
pure hormone.
I don't see anybody who maybe Kamala Harris appeals to those in California. She's certainly not going to be appealing to across the Midwest. And I just think when I think about Cory Booker, I go down Avenatti, I think about all these different people, and I'm like, no one can really bring it all together for the electoral win, which is what it's about.
Oprah could.
She just
I know you feel very strongly about that, but do you?
But hold on a second.
Yeah, that's the
voting machines were not working in Georgia.
And so
those kinds of things actually make a difference.
And actually, she hasn't lost yet, and they still think that there could be there's a recount.
If it takes you a second to look it up, that's fine. But where is that race at the moment? And let me know if you need a minute.
Well, no, but I'll only say that Georgia is unique in the fact that the candidate has to get 50% plus one to avoid a runoff. Yeah. Unlike a lot of states where it's a winner take all and that's it. So if Brian Kemp does not, when they're still counting on the absentee ballots, is 49.9%. That means they go into automatic recount.
Is that where they are right now, though? Is 49.9%?
It's not quite there, but I'm saying they're saying that they're not quite ready to concede, and that it's not quite there because of absentee and outstanding ballots. in some Democratic strongholds. So I'm saying that's a unique place to where there still could be a recount in December if that does happen. So.
And Oprah endorsing somebody is not the same thing as Oprah running.
No, she's not no, but Trump took her out with one tweet.
Trump could, you can't take Oprah out.
He took her out. He said, no, if you know the history, when he tweeted out, he said, I know, Oprah knows that I know more about her than she's letting on. And he said this a long time ago when he was in the primaries, when people were saying, when they were talking about Oprah back then. And he nicely, casually put out there, because he's known Oprah for a long time, he said, I would love for her to run. And when he said, and this isn't just in the last couple months, this was about a year and a half ago, when he had dropped, oh, please do, Oprah, because they've all known each other for a long time. And he's like, I would love to. I would love for that, because all of his skeletons are out there.
I don't think
he knows some stuff.
I
don't. He knows how to play. He knows how to do.
I know he knows how to make stuff up.
Yeah.
No.
Oprah's not going to run. Just Oprah has been saying for like 10 years. I mean,
do you think there's a chance that Stedman might run? Because that would get me excited.
50%, by the way, Brian Kemp. So he's right at the line, but there's still 97%
but it has to be
reporting.
That 50. Oh, okay. So
right. So it's 50-49, right? 48 right now. So yeah, it's pretty close.
Yet here we are, and it is what 2:00 on the East Coast, and there's not really a lot outstanding at this point. And by that I mean, look, these whole hour and a half was beyond outstanding. Obviously, the panel did a great job, but I mean outstanding in the sense for that's really of most national interest. That's kind of the last one that we're really waiting to see, unless I'm selling something short.
Well, the House in California, those votes are still ongoing, and that takes a while. So the 7 House districts that we're waiting to hear back on, there's a few that are still outstanding. Also, again, Wisconsin governor. It looks better for Democrat Tony Evers now because a bunch of 30,000 votes just came in for him. That helps expand his lead, but again, that's still too close to call. So it's really those House seats left in California and some of these governor's races here. And, of course, the Arizona and Nevada Senate seats are still being counted as well. So,
how did Missouri go?
For what?
Or I'm sorry, Minnesota.
Democrat across the board. Governor, Senate, yeah.
Well, and that was and I forget her name. I'm sorry.
Tina Smith
was appointed to replace Al Franken. Yeah. So now she gets a full term, or okay. So that's literally what I knew about the Minnesota races was the Al Franken seat, which is of course not the Al Franken seat anymore, because it's not him, Al Franken. In any case,
former Al Franken.
The former Al Franken seat. In any case, I have enjoyed speaking with everyone. I hope that everyone in the chat has enjoyed it. Drexel, thank you for coming. You are always welcome to join us, except I know that because we do the show Tuesday afternoons, you are busy.
I'll call in.
Yeah, well, I'm perfectly fine with that. Where do people find you out there in the world and the interwebs and such?
At Drexel Heard.
So easy.
It's so easy.
So simple.
I think it's so simple.
Paul, I remember from your email, yours is not so simple, but where do people find you?
Instagram at Journey with the PKD.
That's what it was.
I'm a Reiki master. I teach Wing Chun Kung Fu as well, and I like to opine on philosophical and all sorts of things. So follow me.
What do you think of Iron Fist? No, that's mostly a joke for me. And you can find me at Christian DMZ. That's Twitter and Instagram, and you can find the Trump Report at Trump Report ABTV, and you can find us in our normal time slot, and we see someone in the chat who's there every week. Thanks for joining us. We're so glad to see you here. Tuesdays at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern.
We don't get to give our shout-outs.
No, I'm going to go to...
Oh, okay.
Are you okay tonight?
Sounded like you were...
No, I'm just going this way.
Oh, okay.
And Chelsea, where do people find you?
At Chelsea Galicia.
Scott, where do people Tamra, where do people find you? Tamra, where do people find you?
Find me on YouTube at Hey Tamra, because I've just put up a new Sarah Huckabee Sanders for Halloween impression. So check that out.
Will there be one for Thanksgiving, or am I jumping too far ahead?
We will. Do you think she'll still be
around?
That's
what I was going to say. Will she still be around?
See.
I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know.
I think that job's hers as long as she wants it. And Scott, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at sman80. That's sman80.
And as I mentioned before, Brooke Soliz at Brooke Soliz TV. Thanks to her for joining us as well. And we had a very lively chat. And look, we all get together on an election night, and everybody seems to be leaving with much better feelings than we did 2 years ago. So, except Scott didn't get to color in the map, as we addressed earlier. But, 2 more years.
And I didn't get my home state. I didn't get Florida to go.
We will get a map for 2020.
Yes.
Anyway, special thanks to Juliet in the booth. I was going to say bonjour, but at this point I should say au revoir. So thank you to everyone, and we will see you next Tuesday, 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.